So, we meet again, my arch nemesis, bladder snails. And a few Malaysian trumpet snails, but they're not really in the tanks that I'm worrying about. These bladder snails, pond snails, whatever you want to call them, they have returned. And wouldn't you know it, it came in that shipment of DOA plants that I was told came from a tank with no snails. Figures. So, what the heck am I going to do about this? Because I just started 3 brand new tanks, and they didn't have snails in them before, but guess what? They have snails in them now. So I got to come up with a plan. Plan of action. Got to think outside the box. And maybe I have an idea. Maybe I don't. Who's to say? But I'm going to share my ideas with you. My first idea to get rid of these things because, man, I've tried a lot, but this is something I haven't tried before. Okay, all snails need calcium. They like hard water. It helps their shell growth. It helps grow algae, etc. So I thought to myself, what if I put the snails in pure reverse osmosis water? Maybe I can subject them to something known as osmotic shock. And that might be enough to kill them. And it wouldn't kill the plants. If it was a fish in there, yes, it would kill them too. But it leaves no chemicals because it's an absolute lack of anything. Which a lack of anything is a big deal to anything. It's really not a lot of oxygen saturation. There's no calcium or minerals or nutrients whatsoever in RO water. It's, well, close to. If it's RODI, then there's none. But this is my little experiment because I got the 55-gallon tank here, and oh yeah, it's still a mess. But after a few days in here with the light from Fluval instead of the Finnex Stingrays, in super, super hard water, I'm talking straight from my well, look at the transformation! I'm getting green plants, and they are growing roots. So that's fantastic news. The plants I have will survive to an extent, at least most of them at this point, and grow and reproduce. I'm already seeing them starting to reproduce. Awesome! What's not so awesome, possum, is the hitchhikers that came along with them. Can't really focus on them on the glass here. There we go. See the snails? They're everywhere. If I can focus on my hand here. There. Bladder snails, pond snails, whatever you want to call them. Reproducing like mad inside of this tank. I mean, look at the roots on these guys. They're starting to grow. And these roots are prime territory for these snails to lay their eggs. So if I transfer them to the other tank, they're just going to have snail infestation. And the sad thing is, these other tanks do have snails already, because these plants were in the other tanks at some point in time. So much for relying on other sellers to provide me these plants. That is truly a bummer, because that is the prerequisite that I set. And of course, I don't get what I asked for. Anywho, because this is all super hard water, perfect environment for snails. Excuse me. Weird sneeze there. Moving on. The problem is that despite the fact that this water is perfect for snails, it's also set up perfectly for plant growth. Not a good combo. So there's a few ways I can attack this problem. I'm trying the most humane way, I guess you would call it, which is just straight reverse osmosis water, so no remineralizer, so, osmotic shock might kill them, and that would be the easiest way to just do it, because I would just turn off my filter here, lock up the connections going in and out so that the biomedia is fine. Drain all the water out, fill it all the way up with RO water. It shouldn't hurt the plants, that's the thing. But it should really disturb the snails. And as you can see, this snail, I recently just put him in, is heading towards the surface. And I think he's doing that because generally oxygen in a collection of water resides towards the top of a tank. So maybe it's going up to the top for oxygen. But I have them in, two of them in this little container, just to see if it'll work. And I'll look after the next few days and see if this actually does work, because I've been discussing this with other people. We've talked about dosing no planaria, which is hit or miss. No planaria will kill certain snails like rabbit snails, nearite snails, mystery snails. But when it comes to other snails that are more pest class, like Malaysian trumpet snails and ram's horns and bladder snails, because they're so dang hardy, they're really not affected by it. Then we talked about other things. There was a really interesting idea someone had, and that was to put a liner of cellophane liner all the way around to completely block it so that nothing can escape, and fill up the tank with seltzer water, and that would produce like 600% more CO2 into the water, so it would be death by CO2, which basically is just asphyxiating them, which could work. He said he's had some good success with that. Now that's really thinking outside the box, but you would need to cover the top, and the only problem I have with that is my plants get their oxygen from the air, not the water, because they're floaters. So that may or may not be a problem for the plants. I don't know. I'm going to have to think about that one, but that's kind of a neat outside the box idea. My last ditch effort plan involves a product that you cannot source from within the United States. It's called Gastropex, and it's made by Esha, and it's got mixed results. I think it's got mixed results because people use it on Malaysian trumpet snails, and Malaysian trumpet snails lock their doors up and hide under the water or under the sand. These are bladder snails. They're much easier to kill. Honestly, if I just got a legion of pufferfish, they would annihilate the snails. But the problem is puffers plus shrimp tanks, that's not really a great idea. I've had puffers in my shrimp tank before, and Little Poof was fantastic, but that's very uncommon to have a puffer not attack shrimp. So, and on top of that, I still have emotional problems with certain fish, like puffers. When Little Poof passed away, that really hit me really hard, because I really, really did like Little Poof. I got her as strictly a utilitarian fish, and I absolutely fell in love with the way she was just so goofy and derped about, and she was one of my most beloved pets. And getting another puffer to do the same thing just feels like as if I'm trying to replace her, and just emotionally it takes a toll. And I don't know if I can bring myself to do that. But if I have to do it, then I have to do it. But I'm trying to look for other ways to do things. There's ideas of using liquid CO2, adding it into the tank, and that could potentially asphyxiate the snails as well. Long story short, hey, if you've got ideas, I would love to hear them. But ideas I don't want to hear is assassin snails, snail traps, using loaches, and here's why. I've had 70 assassin snails, in that 40 breeder and hundreds of Malaysian trumpet snails. The MTS outbreed the assassins, and the assassins end up getting overrun. It just doesn't work, unfortunately, at least not in my tanks. 2. Snail traps. I've used everything from homemade to professionally manufactured traps. They have so many critical flaws that don't annihilate the problem. I want complete removal of the snails, not controlling the population of them. And 3. Loaches. Sounds like a great idea, but the problem is they get really big in certain cases. They're not going to work in a shrimp tank, and they're shoaling fish, so they need to be in groups in order to remain happy. I just couldn't see myself doing that to the poor fish if it's just for a utilitarian purpose. So, I'm willing to hear ideas, but I need something outside of the box. Anything you guys might have, I would be happy to listen to, so long as it's not the same stuff I've been hearing over and over again.